you will know that there is a little deviation for the better from a way and manner upon which our budget is being prepared and presented.
The House has also approved 61.55 billion naira as supplementary budget for the Federal Capital Territory for the outgoing year. Joke Edse, TVC News, Abuja.
The meeting of the Ondo State Executive Council has ended with a commitment by members to abide by the resolutions reached at the meeting, with President Bola Tinubu in Abuja. Addressing journalists at the end of the meeting, the State Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Bamidele Ademola Olateju, said the council resolved to embrace peace. Ayodiji Muradio reports.
The Ondo State Executive Council meeting came after 3 months of political imbroglio caused by the absence of Governor Rotimi Akeredolu. The meeting, which was presided over by the State Deputy Governor, Lucky Ayedatiwa, began at exactly 12 noon. The Secretary to the State Government, Oladomidu, commissioners and special advisors in attendance. After 4 hours of deliberations, the meeting ended. Members of the cabinet had a group photograph. The State Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Bamidele Ademola Olateju, briefed journalists on the outcome of the meeting. Mrs. Ademola Olateju said they have all agreed to embrace peace and work together as a team. According to her, they also resolved to abide by the resolutions reached at the meeting with President Bola Tinubu in Abuja.
One family, one ESCO, under one administration, we vowed that we will work for the progress of Ondo State, that we are working hard and Ondo State is working, and we will continue to work for the progress of our state. So I call on those people who foment lies, rumors, fake news on social media to please cease and desist.
Issues discussed included the alleged forging of the signature of Governor Akeredolu, as well as distribution of palliatives to residents.
It's on record that the government is working because we were able to buy food items and disburse to our people. We have disbursed 2 tranches of palliatives. Body is forging the governor's signature. As I'm standing before you now, I sent 2 files to Mr. Governor, and the 2 files came back within a week. And he approved what I asked for, and it was not different from what I'm accustomed to.
With this, it appears peace has finally returned to the Ondo State Executive Council, and it is hoped that the gladiators will abide by the resolutions reached at the meeting and that of Abuja with President Bola Tinubu. Ayodiji Muradio, TVC News, Akure.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our first guest of the day, who is the Administrative Secretary of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, Benedict Chinedu Mokoro, for discussion on APGA and the tussle for leadership. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. Now, last night on Politics Tonight, we had the National Chairman of All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, Barrister Sylvester Eziokenwa, on the program as he gave us an insight into all that has been happening within the party in the last 6 months. I mean, he also revealed that Chief Edozie Njoku, who has been in this leadership tussle for the past 5 years, is not a registered member of APGA. Tonight we have Benedict Okoro, who is the National Administrative Secretary of APGA, for more insight into this matter. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Right.
First of all,
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me address the issue which you mentioned, that someone said that Chief Edozie Njoku is not a member of All Progressives Grand Alliance. Let me quickly, just one sentence on that. The first, history is something that everyone, identifies with, because history most times speak about facts. And the facts is what every event of people who participated in certain, certain events in the society. So there are always people who can say this happened and this didn't happen. Chief Edozie Njoku is the first national vice chairman southeast of APGA, when the founding father and the first national chairman of APGA, Chief Chekwas Okorie, all of them were all together. This is fact. I am calling names of people who are living. And secondly, Chief Edozie Njoku ran for election in Anambra, representing, he was given the ticket to fly APGA ticket for Onitsha North and Onitsha South. These are facts. And thirdly, Chief Edozie Njoku was the secretary of the committee that screened Peter Obi as candidate of APGA in 2023 governorship election in Anambra. As at that time, the person who was saying that Chief Edozie Njoku is not a member of APGA was in secondary school. And secondly, Chief Victor Oye, who is being now, mentioned in this whole imbroglio, was just, without sounding immodest, was an auctioneer at St. Matthew's Catholic Church in Amobia. These are facts. But after this program, we will be able to put, facts and lies in the appropriate places. I will show you, this is a letter. This is a letter that was written to INEC. This letter is addressed to the chairman of INEC. I want you to see the volume. This is the volume. It was addressed to the chairman of INEC on September 8th, 2023. And the caption is simply, APGA leadership tussle. Chronicles of how the Supreme Court on March 24, 2023 came and arrived at the conclusion that Chief Edozie Njoku is the national chairman of APGA. And with me is an acknowledgement copy of this very letter from the office of the INEC chairman. And the letter is unambiguous. It simply tried to inform the chairman of INEC that there is an enforcement judgment of the Buhari High Court, the High Court, FCT High Court 40 Buhari, which clearly and unambiguously declared Edozie Njoku as the national chairman of APGA. This is a copy. And what we should be asking is, why is INEC not respecting, acknowledging, and abiding by this very judgment of Buhari High Court? Because the APGA tussle has taken some time and some years, there is a temptation of people to begin to twist facts. But the fact is that on March 24th, this is the Supreme Court judgment. March 24th, 2023, the Supreme Court. People cannot come before a live television being watched by the whole world and say, this is this, this is not that. Facts are stubborn. The Supreme Court is manned by people who have passed through trainings and have quite knowledgeable and quite renowned cognitive experiences given their years of training. And this is a Supreme Court judgment of March 24th, 2023. And the judgment is very clear. And it declared Chief Edozie Njoku as the national chairman of APGA.
All right, Mr. Okoro. And last night on the program, the national chairman, Barrister Sylvester, quoted another judgment saying the status quo must be maintained before the national convention. Which one do we go with now?
We will go, that's why I said, we will go, any judgment, the court is like a laboratory. Law is science, and the court is like a lab. When you go to the laboratory, you mix this and that, and it gives you a result. The same result it gives you in Chicago is the same result it gives you in Newi or in Abuja. There is no mix-up. The fact is, what did the Supreme Court say? What did the Supreme Court say? And what the Supreme Court said has been cleverly reduced into what the enforcement judgment of the FCT High Court Buhari. And let me quickly take you around the enforcement judgment, because the Supreme Court does not embark on enforcement of its own judgment. By virtue of Section 287, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution, it says that lower courts have the jurisdiction to enforce the decision of the Supreme Court. And this is what the judgment of the lower court said with regards to the judgment of the Supreme Court. So it is an enforcement. And let me quickly read that, please. I'll crave your indulgence. It says, the judgment order says, the acts of the respondents, that is, Victor Oye and INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood, refusing to obey and comply with the subsisting judgments of the Supreme Court, made on 14th of October 2021 and corrected on March 24, 2023, and duly served on them, amounts to disobedience of the judgments and order of the Supreme Court. 2. The actions of the first respondent, that is Victor Oye, posing and parading himself, occupying party secretariat as the national chairman of APGA, contrary to the judgment and order of the Supreme Court, made on the 14th of October 2021 and further corrected on 24th March 2023, is a disobedience and a clear violation of the judgments of the Supreme Court. Third, an order of injunction. The court now went on to give an order. It says, an order of injunction is hereby granted, restraining the second respondent, whether by its angels, private signs, authorized representatives, or whoever, described from accepting, recognizing, and dealing with the first respondent. That is, the court now told INEC specifically, do not deal with Oye. Fourth, the respondents must comply with the decision of the Supreme Court made on 14th October 2021, as subsequently corrected on March 24, 2023, which was exhibited in Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. This is the court judgment. And lastly, it says, it is hereby declared, that is a declaratory judgment. It is hereby declared that all the actions taken or to be taken by the first respondent, that is Oye as APGA chairman, and the second respondent, that is Mahmood, as regards to Congress, conventions, primaries, meetings of any sort whatsoever, in disregard or disobedience to the judgment of the Supreme Court, amounts to null and void. That is the judgment that was given by the Buhari FCT High Court 40 Buhari. June 6th,
my question is, can you hold on? My question is, which of these orders came first? This one you're quoting, or the one that says the party must maintain status quo before the National Convention? Which of these orders came first?
Perfect. There are two orders given by the Buhari FCT High Court Buhari. Two orders. One was on May 10th. On May 10th, 2023. It clearly says, because some members of the NWC, led by Otumba Kamaru Latif Ogidan and Rabiu Mustafa, these are NWC members of the party, they went to court and said they cannot understand what's going on. The Supreme Court gives judgment, and some people are busy, boldly and brazenly disobeying Supreme Court judgment. And they went to the FCT High Court in Buhari and says, come on, there has to be an enforcement to this judgment. So on May 10th, they went by way of ex parte motion. And the court says in its wisdom, no. Let's not do it an ex parte. Call Oye. Let Oye come with his people, come with his lawyers. You come with your own lawyers so that we will resolve this. But in the interim, that's why it is an interim order. It says on May 10th, let everybody not do anything. Chief Njoko, do nothing. Don't parade yourself. Don't do anything. Oye, stay where you are. And INEC, do not recognize anyone. don't go to, don't monitor any Congress, don't do nothing. That was what the court said on May 10th. Unfortunately, after that order, everybody left the court. And it is interesting to know that the caliber of people representing Oye in the court, the likes of Onye Chipas was there. And the court said, don't do anything. But they went out of the court. The next 2 days, Oye was in Awka holding a NEC meeting in the name of APGA. Oye was in Awka holding congresses, holding primaries, and holding convention. And a certain Mr. Festus, I forgot his name, is eluded me now. Festus Okoye, please, a former national commissioner. He went to there and he was in the convention. And they now went and submitted a list, and the INEC accepted it. That is a violation of the May 10th court order saying, do not do anything. Let status quo ante bellum be maintained. It proceeded there. Immediately that order, please a minute, immediately that order came. Oye and his colleagues rushed off while they were equally doing the convention and disobeying the court order. They equally rushed off to appeal court to go and appeal. And I will show you. This is the document. They went to appeal on June 8th. They went to appeal saying the order cannot hold. When they went to appeal, the appeal court in, let me read the suit number for you, CA ABJ CV 582-2023 this year, June 8th, the court struck off them, deleted it from the courses. The language was delete and remove from the appeal court Abuja division courses. That is, it should never be mentioned that such kind of matter came to this honorable court. And before then, June 6th, this happened on May 10th, they went and got that, they went to appeal court, it was struck off on June 8th. As at June 6th, there was already a judgment delivered, which court order I have read clearly and unambiguously. So that is it.
Mr. Okoro, well noted. But another very critical question is, why is the party still enmeshed in this leadership crisis? 6 months after Sylvester Eziokenwa emerged as national chairman at the APGA convention.
Well, if you had listened them through the course of my explanation, I have chosen my words carefully. I think so. So
before you answer that question, did you all agree to that national convention?
Which national convention are you talking about?
APGA national convention.
I'm coming. Good. The national convention in Awka was declared a null and void activity ab initio by the very court order that came out on May 10th. That convention was held, that illegal convention was held on May 31st, after the court has given its order. So it does not exist before the law. And that is why you see them jumping from one television to the other, trying to validate what cannot be invalidated. They are looking for validation, and they cannot come. You don't get validation on television. The validation we must seek in this Nigeria is the validation of the court. The court is what says this is this, and this is not that. And that is the reason why, even after all this, the letter we wrote to INEC, we keep writing to INEC, like I showed you. And look at what the letter written by the same Festus Okoye wrote in his letter on the same May 10th. It reads the Commission's position on national leadership of APGA. After all he wrote, which is a total negation of what happened in Jigawa, where a clear judgment says Judo KK is the person who should take over as the acting national chairman of the party. From the Jigawa court, the judgment of Justice Musa Obale on June 30th. Immediately, because Judo KK is of the Owerri Convention, immediately that judgment came out. INEC, in less than 24 hours, recognized Judo KK. And on July 16th, 2021, they asked him to bring the list of who should represent the party's candidate in Anambra election by November 2021. And he produced Chumu Moji. We should be asking INEC what every reasonable Nigerian, what every sensible Nigerian, what all those who love the law and should protect it should be asking INEC is, why are you not recognizing the judgment of the Supreme Court and further enforced by the FCT High Court Buhari? And to show you that there is a mindset. Madam, excuse please. Now look at what was written in the letter, public letter that was written by Festus Okwe. He says, the courts are not helpless. The courts are not helpless. When they make orders, deliver judgments, and make pronouncements, they also have the capacity to punish for disobedience of their orders and the judgments in committal proceedings. This is the process open to law-abiding citizens, groups, organizations, rather than resorting to self-help and cheap blackmail using amorphous groups to malign the commission. That's what Festus Okoye wrote on behalf of the commission in INEC's letterheaded paper on May 10th. And that is why the members of the NWC now went to Buhari, FCT High Court Buhari, and got this judgment. And after the judgment, we wrote to INEC, and INEC refused to obey again, and they went on committal charge. I want you to understand this matter. The committal charge is about people who boldly, brazenly, and proudly refuse to recognize a Supreme Court judgment, further enforced by the Buhari, the High Court, FCT High Court Buhari. And despite all that, they went on committal charge. And the court took 2 committal charges. Our lawyers filed 2 committal charges, which I want you to pay attention, please. 1, there is a committal charge on that May 10th interim order. There is a committal charge on May 10th, 2023 interim order. That one involves INEC chairman and Victor Ike Oye for disobeying the interim order of the court. That one is captured in the 10586. That is the motion number. Now, the another committal charge is for the refusal of INEC. That is the judgment, June 6th, 2023. INEC's refusal to recognize Chief Njoko as stated clearly and unambiguously on the very court order of the church, or court order of the court. And it says clearly that you must obey that court order. And the court, in its magnanimity, gave them clear, very clear, long rope, leniency, 14 good days, and says, INEC, recognize Chief Njoko.
We're gradually running out of time. So let me quickly ask you this question. In the face of all these court cases, what efforts have been made to resolve this matter? This has been on for 5 years.
Okay. Chief Njoko and the NWC have been, Chief Edozie Njoko, the national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, has extended hands, has explored all forms of friendship, all forms of peace, has explored all of them. He has called the governor. He has tried to make sure, even Chief Chekwas Okoro, all of them have come to the NWC, have always tried to make sure they've been saying, let there be peace. In fact, Chief Njoko surprised us. Before we even went to this matter went to Supreme Court, Njoko was on national television. And he said, let me, my humble self, Chief Njoko, step down, let Oye step down, let the party come together and discuss. But it didn't work. You know why? You know, when somebody has is in possession of power, and he feels that he can always get which he so much, whatever he wants, he can get it. But we have stick to the law. And the party is good. The party, all members of the party knows that the national chairman is Chief Njoko. And the party is moving on. The party is moving on. And what we are working on now is by the time we are done with the next 1, 2, 3 weeks, Chief Njoko and the NWC will unleash a very wonderful program that will dazzle other. In fact, other political parties, when they see the framework, they will be shocked. They will be amazed. It provides clear plan, a program of plan for all members of the party. Thank you.
Right, but as the administrative secretary of the party, who is running the party secretariat?
There are organograms, constitutional organograms. The party secretariat is definitely run by the National Secretary of the Party. National Secretary of the Party.
Between these two persons, Njoku or Sylvester Eziokenwa faction, which of this faction is running the Secretariat?
You see, when you keep talking about running, you see, the court, I will refer you again to the court order, which I stated here. The court says that the parties that Oye occupying the party secretariat as national chairman of APGA is contrary to the judgment and order of the Supreme Court. So, the hood does not make the monk. The hood does not make the monk. We all know that. He is in violation of a court order. What we should be saying is, why is the Inspector General of Police, why they have not gone there to throw them out? That's what we should be talking about. When you talk about the secretariat being managed, the secretariat being managed is an illegal affair being done by Oya and his group. They shouldn't be there. The court order is clear.
I asked that question.
Thank you.
Right. I asked that question because you're here today saying Edozie Njoku is the chairman, and Barrister Sylvester Eziokenwa is also saying he's a national chairman. Do you have two secretariats?
Well, for now, what you have asked me clearly is a clear indication that you understand what I have said, that the Supreme Court judgment has said who and where the secretariat is. The secretariat is with Njoku. Thank you.
So my simple question is, who is running, what faction is running the secretariat? It's a simple question.
No, what you should be asking me is that who is illegally occupying the APGA secretariat? And that is Oye's group are illegally occupying the national secretariat of APGA. Thank you.
All right, I have my answers already. So what is the way forward so that peace can return to your party?
Oh, thank you. The way forward is that we as the National Working Committee of the party, we continue to follow the law to where it takes us. Already, like I did tell you, we will not do anything that is untoward, or nothing will ever push us to go and do anything that will maintain the image that we've been able to build under the leadership of Chief Edozie Njoku. The way forward is we will follow the law. That's the way forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I've been speaking with Benedict Okoro, who is the National Administrative Secretary of APGA. Thank you so much for joining us on Politics Tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's take a short break, and when we return, it will be time to speak with our second guest of the day, who is an economist and CEO of Dairy Hills Limited, Kelvin Emmanuel, for discussion on President Tinubu's first budget. Please stay with us.
Sales, sales, sales! Embrace the holiday spirit with a shopping extravaganza at the TVC Women's Network First Sales Fair. Join us for an amazing opportunity to explore a wide array of products and services at festive discounts. Discover irresistible offers. Mark your calendar, December 15th to 17th, 2023. Venue, TVC Communications, 1 Continental Drive off CMD Road, Ikosiketu, Lagos. Time, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Immerse yourself in the festive vibe with a shopping spree featuring exciting games, stunning showcases, and live performances. Wrap up your shopping list with unmissable savings. For inquiries, call 0803-284-8509. Join us for an unforgettable holiday shopping adventure. This event is brought to you by TVC Communications.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by an economist, Kelvin Emmanuel, for discussion on President Tinubu's first budget. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you. Mr. Emmanuel, the 2024 budget has been presented to the National Assembly. What do you consider the most instructive about it?
I didn't get that question. Can you say it one more time, please?
The 2024 budget has been presented to the National Assembly. What do you consider the most instructive about it?
Well, for me, I don't see the significant changes and improvements from the 2023 Appropriation Act. And the reason is because in 2023, debt servicing was 6.5 trillion naira, or 32.5% of the budget. In 2024, debt servicing has gone up to 8.2 trillion naira, which is 30% of the budget. Now, it is 30%, 2.5% lower, and you can see that that revaluation loss on the exchange rate has pushed the debt servicing higher. The total debt now stands at 89 trillion, and it keeps going up because of the new debt that the government is acquiring. So, in my opinion, I think the most significant thing to note is the fact that the president is not really showing that he's pivoting away from that fiscal strategy of huge budget deficit, which is 48% in this 2024 budget, yes, and drawing down on the debt servicing and refinancing costs, which is very, very critical, because you basically need to borrow like 7.8 trillion naira to be able to fund 2024 budget. The question I have for the government is, how are they going to raise 7.8 trillion naira? Is it going to come from multilateral development banks? Is it going to come from the debt capital market through government bonds? Is it going to come from bilateral partners? Where is the money going to come from? And at what exchange interest rate is it going to come? If it's going to come from MDBs, you're going to look at anywhere between 1% and 5%. If you're getting money from bilateral partners, you can get from 1% to 30%. If you're getting money from the debt capital markets, you're looking at anywhere around 16 to 18%. To borrow money from MDBs and bilateral partners is very difficult. You can see that earlier this year, Nigerian government reached out to the Chinese Exim Bank through the Chinese government to borrow money to fund its fiscal strategy medium-term expenditure framework for 2017-2022, and it failed. So the question is, where does the government want to raise the money from?
But with a budget deficit of 9 trillion naira, can the budget bring the needed economic transformation?
Well, so I tell you what, the debt servicing to capital expenditure is 94.8%. Debt servicing to revenue is 45%, which means that you're going to be spending 94.8% of your capital expenditure, which is supposed to go into projects, that will readily push the needle forward into servicing debt. And then you have a situation where the government is struggling to raise revenue. The revenue to GDP ratio for tax is still anywhere around 11 to 12%. Non-revenue to GDP ratio is low because you have crude oil theft in the Niger Delta, and the government is struggling to raise its daily production output from 1.47 million barrels up to the OPEC quota that is given. It's benchmark that is going to be doing 1.78 million barrels per day. But the question is, how is the government planning to reach that target, since it's not been able to do that within the last several years, especially within the last 6 months? How does he expect to reach that target? So, for example, for me, I think the question is, what is the plan of the government, the Office of National Security Advisor that coordinates with all the security agencies, from Defense Intelligence to the DSS to the Marine Police to the Nigerian Navy to the Nigerian Army, to see that they can, work with NNPC and ensure that there is proper surveillance. They install pressure sensors on those pipes for detecting any change in motion for heat and pressure drop, so that you can deploy security agencies to forestall vandalism and crude oil theft in the Niger Delta. That's the way for you to raise revenue. Because as it is right now, NNPC has commitments in forwards to international traders from direct sale, direct purchase that has not been fully paid off. So quite a number of the output you have that is produced daily outside of your JV cash call, your joint venture cash call between the owner of the block, the operator, and NNPC, which is a joint venture partner in that production sharing contract, already goes out to debts that it already owes. So how do you increase your output to a level where you can get significant dollar revenue to pay into FAC and meet up with the revenue shortfall and raise the revenue to GDP ratio for non-tax to revenue GDP ratio? That's a question we should be asking.
Right. But in the last 24 hours, there have been several reactions to those budgets. I mean, the main opposition party, the PDP, says the proposed 27 trillion naira budget is designed to strangulate poor Nigerians. How will you react to that?
I try as much as possible not to get into politics, So I have the areas where I think there's been some improvements in the budget, and I have the areas where I think changes can be made. For example, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, the interest on the debt is 30.88% for 2024, which is like lower than the 6.1% that you had in 2023. That's an improvement. The Fiscal Responsibility Act says that interest on GDP should not be more than 30%. So that is an improvement. Okay. The areas where I'm not comfortable with is the fact that the government is going to spend 30% of the budget to service debt and refinance existing debt, as against if you look at education and healthcare in that budget, the two of them cumulatively is 12.5%. Education and healthcare are the two most critical and important areas in any economy. 30% of the US budget, for example, goes to healthcare. Education and healthcare is absolutely critical. It shows you where a country is and where a country is going. The amount of money a government allocates to that. So if the government can move its fiscal strategy gradually away from debt, yes, to revenue, and reduce that deficit financing in the budget, it can allocate more money to education and healthcare. So you have, for example, the Abuja Declaration in 2010, where the Nigerian government had committed to giving 15% each to both UNESCO education and healthcare, WHO. These are commitments to United Nations, that 15% of Nigeria's budget will go to education, 15% of Nigeria's budget will go to healthcare, cumulatively 30%. So I try as much as possible not to get into the political squabbles between different political factions in Nigeria, because there are improvements in the budget, but there are also areas where I think they can significantly make changes to.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's also look at the revenue target of 18 trillion naira, which many have called quite ambitious. How feasible is this for the government?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's feasible. And one very important area, apart from non-revenue, non-tax to GDP ratio that the government needs to pay attention to, is in the area, and this is an area where the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Reforms has actually highlighted. For example, Ondo State has about 44 state and local government taxes and levies on businesses. River State has about 91 state and local government taxes and levies on businesses. Nigeria needs to simplify its tax code. Okay? There needs to be harmonization of the tax code across federating units. I liked when the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Reform said that Nigeria should not have more than 10 tax and levies across federating units. Telcos pay about 42 different taxes and levies across federating units. That is very high. So if you simplify the tax code and block revenue leakages, automate the tax process, you collapse the revenue collection functions of over 60 MDAs into the Federal Inland Revenue Service. There's no reason why, for example, the Nigerian Customs Service should be in charge of collecting tax revenue at the ports. It's not the work of the Nigerian Customs Service to collect revenue. It's the work of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Everything should be centralized. So all these government MDAs coming together will block revenue leakages. It will reduce the ratio of tax collection to the tax collected. Yeah, it will improve the amount of taxes that are generated. That tax revenue, tax to GDP ratio can significantly go up to about 15 or 16% in 2024. And 18 trillion naira will be very realistic. Another area, for example, where the Presidential Committee needs to focus on, where the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue needs to focus on, Mr. Zacchaeus, is in the area of under-assessment by tax authorities. They need to pay attention to under-assessment and ensure that the proper taxes are levied to companies across the country. If you block these leakages and loopholes, you see that 18% tax to GDP ratio is not impossible. It's very, very much achievable in 2024.
Right. So still talking about revenue generation, the country still depends heavily on oil for most of the revenue. Do you see oil providing the needed funds in the face of volatility in the market?
Well, so I don't think that even if the price of crude oil drops on the International Commodities Exchange in 2024, I don't think that the price will drop significantly below $70 or $68 per barrel. The government has benchmarked at $77 per barrel. So if, for example, the government, by very focused work and intensity, they're able to coordinate across board and reduce the amount of crude oil theft in Nigeria and raise the output to anywhere around 1.8 to 1.9 million barrels per day, definitely you will see that in the performance of the budget, right, the deficit financing that comes from debt will also reduce as more revenue will be generated to be able to fund the budget. I'll tell you categorically here, I don't think the Nigerian government can raise 7.8 trillion naira in debt to fund the 2024 budget. So the tax collection authorities, both for tax and non-tax, they need to, get on their game to see that the dividends that comes from, selling crude oil and paying into NNPC's account that CBN manages with the external asset managers of the Central Bank of Nigeria, which are 6 international banks, and the production petroleum product tax, PPT, that is collected by the Federal Inland Revenue Service actually improved. So for example, I think it's important for the CBN, the CBN governor gave a very rousing and very good speech at the bankers' dinner to pay attention to the foreign exchange policy and to pay attention to strategies to stabilize the exchange rate as a way to provide forward guidance for companies, especially institutional investors that want to bring in investments into oil and gas to improve the number of drilling rigs you have offshore. So you can stimulate because a lot of the international oil companies are moving away from onshore and shallow waters. They are moving offshore. They are selling those onshore assets to national oil companies, indigenous companies. They are moving offshore. But for them to move offshore, they need to build rigs. And it costs a lot of money. For you to incentivize them to come into Nigeria, you need a stable exchange rate, you need to work on inflation, and you need to work on the interest rates. And the thing is, if you work on the stability of the exchange rate market, it will affect inflation as inflation will begin to revise down because of the exposure of Nigeria's supply chain to the exchange rate. And as inflation begins to revise down, the CBN will be prompted to reduce interest rates and incentivize investors to come back into the market to make investments in the oil and gas sector that you need to actually increase the output for crude oil on a daily basis.
All right. So with security, job creation, education, and health being prioritized, how can these translate to economic growth for the country?
See, the calculation for your GDP growth rate, is basically from your metrics on consumer spending, improving the per capita income of Nigerians. It also has to do with your metrics on your inflation. It has to do with the stability of the exchange rates. It has to do with the output, production output in the economy. Look, I'll tell you, the president gave a speech, and he said in his projection that he expects that Nigeria is going to grow at 3.76%, which is actually higher than the global expected weighted average for GDP growth rate around the world. Mm-hmm. Nigeria currently is growing at 2.54%. I don't think that within the next 13 months, Nigeria will suddenly leap 1.2% in terms of GDP growth, because 2024 is going to be a year of rebalancing. That's what I call 2024. 2024 will be a year where the government will try to find its feet and will try to rebalance and see how the removal of petrol subsidy and the finding a true north, a curve for the stability of the exchange rate will impact on the economy. Also, I think that if Nigeria can, wean itself off the dependence of import of petroleum products, and you can come back to that backward integration where commercial refineries in Nigeria start producing all these products and relieve the foreign exchange market for the demand that goes into importing PMS, AGO, and the likes of them, you'll see that the growth will be affected positively if you can get that refinery in Lagos up to 50% capacity utilization. You'll see a 0.5% appreciation in GDP growth. So if, for example, that the refinery in Lagos, Dangote Refinery, has projected that they're going to get up to full capacity utilization by December of 2024, then we're looking at anywhere around 3.5% in terms of GDP growth rate for 2024. Because that refinery is critical and is very, very much at the center of 2024 actually, switching on. I call it switching on, rebalancing the economy and switching the economy back to the path of growth, because it's going to really impact on the supply chain for energy for the entire Nigerian economy. But in terms of 30.76% is optimistic. Is it possible that Nigeria achieves 30.76%? Is possible. But based on all the indicators I've looked at, I actually think that the GDP growth rate is going to fall a little below the president's estimate.
All right. But you would also agree that rising inflation and exchange rates will be big challenges for effective implementation of this budget. What do you think government can do to mitigate this?
So the inflation, exchange rates, and the interest rates, they work together. They work in tandem. That's why the number one job of every central bank is to maintain price stability. Because what you do with your exchange rate impacts on what happens to inflation. And what happens to inflation impacts on what happens to interest rates. Now, as I said earlier, Nigeria's supply chain is exposed heavily so if you look at the basket that is used in calculating inflation, for example, it's mostly energy and food. Think about wheat. Think about the fact that Nigeria imports 5 million metric tons of wheat. Think about the fact that from January 2022 up until now, the price of a loaf of bread went up from 350, 400 naira per loaf to 1,000 naira, 1,100 naira per loaf in most cities of Nigeria. Why? The cost of wheat. The cost of wheat, the shortage of wheat and the cost of wheat. As the exchange rate dropped and it costs more to import wheat, to import sugar, to import several other commodities that are used for production, starch, ethanol, several other commodities that are used for manufacturing, FMCG manufacturing, you started seeing the impact that had on inflation. Between 2022 January and December 2023, that starts tomorrow, or November 30th, 2023, inflation went up from 16.75% to 31.1% for food inflation, 27.3% for headline inflation. And you see that as inflation went up, between the same period, the central bank raised the interest rates from 11.5% to 18.75% where you currently have it. So as inflation goes up, because your supply chain is exposed to imports and your currency is dropping because the government went ahead with printing money through quantitative easing, taking money from banks to fund government expenditure, taking money from public sector MDAs to fund government expenditure at 0% interest. Yeah, you could see that because you didn't have external reserves and assets to back that quantitative easing or printing of money, the Naira started falling significantly. So for you to stop it, number one, the president needs to rein in on the National Assembly to ensure that they provide oversight for the central bank. They stop ways and means and limit it to the level stated by the law, which is 15% of real revenues for the previous accounting year. So if, for example, the government goes ahead and it does 18 trillion naira in revenues in 2024. That law says that the limit on which the federal government can borrow from the Central Bank of Nigeria must not exceed 15% of 18 trillion naira in 2024. That plays an important factor in the strength of the naira, and the strength of the naira determines your inflation, and inflation determines your interest
All right,
rates.
then. Mr. We're out of time. Sadly, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I've been speaking with an economist, Kelvin Emmanuel, as we discuss President Tinubu's first budget. Thank you so much for coming on Politics Tonight for this very important conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for watching. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But this conversation continues from here. Get in touch with us on Twitter at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke WO using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Good night.
Bye, Mom.
He's going to play in this weather. Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, we use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with germ defense gives you protection. Raining season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
So here's the thing. Why do you do what you do? Is it because it's what you want to do? Or it's what other people expect you to do? The most important thing is to take a step every day in the direction of where you want to be. It means you're not where you want to be, but you're on the way there. Take your own bold steps with 9 Mobile.
Dial *301# to choose a data plan that works for you.
9 Mobile.
In the month of November, on the 2nd of November is International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. On the 5th of November, it's World Tsunami Awareness Day. And the 7th of November marks 1 month of war between Israel and Palestine after Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October. And still on the 7th, the world celebrates Infant Protection Day. 10th November is World Science Day for Peace and Development. The 12th of November is World Pneumonia Day, while 14th of November is World Diabetes Day. The 18th of November is World Day for the Prevention of and Healing from Child Sexual Exploitation, Abuse and Violence. On the 19th, the day is dedicated to remembering road traffic victims. And same day is World Toilet Day and International Men's Day. While on the 25th, it's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Brace yourself and tune in to TVC News for in-depth reporting and analysis on these days. TVC News, first with breaking news.
There is always more to a story than the screaming headline. The part of a story that is not told casts a shadow. It's like the part of an object that is not reached by light. On TVC News, I'm able to explore the many angles there are to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions, and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well informed and understand not just a part, but the complete story. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Lagos is the most visited state in Africa as the 5th largest economy on the continent. Covering the state and its government is no mean feat. It's a busy beat.